So I got vitiligo when I was 7 years old. It started on my spine, and my mom knew what it was because my grandmother had vitiligo for most of her life. And after appearing on my spine, it spread pretty quickly. And by the time I was in my early 20s, I had lost 100% of my skin's pigment to vitiligo. So today I run a blog for women with vitiligo called Living Dappled. And I'm always just interested in talking to other brands, people in the community, and that's why I'm here today. So universal vitiligo is just a way of describing vitiligo that affects most of the body. Vitiligo can appear in many different ways on the skin. So it might just be a single patch in one part of your body. You might have it on only half of your body, but not on the other half. And then universal is when you have significant vitiligo coverage on your skin. And so, since I've lost 100% of my skin's pigment, I certainly fall into that category. Some people refer to universal as 80% or more loss of pigment. So, it's kind of a benchmark for thinking about that categorization. I think the most or the biggest misconception about universal vitiligo is that because you either don't have spots or at that point because you've lost a lot of your skin's pigment, universal vitiligo is easier than other forms of vitiligo. When you have spots all over your skin, you frequently have to deal with stares, comments, questions, and that can be exhausting and just emotionally taxing. And I'll be the first to admit that having one color of skin again is certainly easier day to day. There's no denying that, but I wouldn't say it's necessarily easy. In many ways, I'm still trying to cope with the fact that I look completely different than I did when I was younger. It's still hard for me to wrap my mind around the fact that I have a completely different skin color today. And I'm also still dealing with a lot of the emotional pain that I went through. I struggled significantly growing up with vitiligo. I just had crippling anxiety. I would cry myself to sleep. I just, there was like many years when vitiligo just consumed my life. And it took all of those moments to lead up to the point where I lost 100% of my skin color. And so that emotional pain just doesn't leave you overnight. And just because my last bit of skin's pigment went away doesn't mean that like 20 years of that experience is just like gone in the blink of an eye. So I think if you have universal vitiligo, you have been through literally every other stage of it. And so, um, it's, you're still experiencing it and you're still moving through a lot of emotions, even though your spots are gone. Well, I mean, in terms of career, I work in marketing, um, and I also run Living Dappled, which is a blog for women with vitiligo. So I spend a lot of time in the writing and content creation space. Um, and I think in terms of like how vitiligo affects me, like right now, day to day, it's mostly just about trying to be confident in this new skin that I'm in, and then also just trying to be safe in the sun because having no pigment, I burn very easily. And so, even something as simple as like going for a walk around my neighborhood, I need to think about sunscreen and make sure that I don't burn. I also had worn tanner, like I mentioned, for 7 years, head to toe, before I took it off a year ago. And I'm still adjusting to this new version of me and this new reflection in the mirror. And I think especially like when summer comes around, that can be hard again. There were many years where my initial reaction to showing someone my skin was like a reaction of fear. And now I think when I put on shorts, no one can see, they just see that I'm pale. They can't see my spots, but that doesn't mean that I don't still feel that reaction of being nervous for people to see my skin. And so I think right now for me, it's mostly an emotional journey in terms of like how it affects my day to day. And then just keeping in mind like the skin health factor and not trying to burn my skin. I mean, I think the message that I have for my younger self that could easily apply to anyone still struggling today is just that it will get better. It can get better. There is hope. I wish I had known that when I was in my darkest moments. I think when you live with vitiligo, you just, it gives you the sense that you have no control over what's happening to your body. You have no control and you have no choice, and that's devastating and really hard, and it can make you feel stuck and like you have no way out. And in many ways, like there's no end in sight to this pain that you're going through, and this experience that you're having. And so, you know, compared to where I was before, I'm incredibly confident. I'm hopeful about my future. I'm feeling better about the skin I'm in. And I don't know that there was an easier way to get there. Like, I don't know that there's any quick fix to moving forward, but I know that even in those dark days, like I always still got up, I always still tried again. I remember like sitting on the floor of my apartment just crying and sobbing because it was really hot out, and I knew I was going to put on shorts and have to deal with a lot of stairs, and like the anxiety and the fear was just literally crippling. But I always stood back up and I walked outside, and you know, I had my day with my friends, and I just wish I could know that like it's not always going to be like that. And if you keep seeking like a better way of living, whether it's mental, emotional, or some other way, like you will get there. So like don't give up, and like there is hope around the corner. I think I mean, if you're living with vitiligo right now, I think this is an exciting time for the vitiligo community at large. I started blogging 4 years ago, and we, like at that point, we didn't have a Barbie with vitiligo. There was no cover girl with vitiligo. I wasn't seeing pictures of models with vitiligo on billboards. Like so much has changed in the past few years, and I think it's truly exciting. Just the way that the world is embracing vitiligo, and then also on the research side, vitiligo research is starting to pick up. And so we still need treatments and a cure. And that just research and treatments for the past like decade have picked up in speed. And so that's really exciting too. So again, I think it's just a message of hope, because we have, you know, support coming in so many ways, whether it's mainstream media accepting vitiligo and just making more people aware of this condition, or actually getting medical treatments and options for those who want to try to treat their skin. Yeah, I think there is. And that's something that's been weighing on me recently. I think what's interesting is that with vitiligo being picked up in mainstream media, um, the world kind of, it kind of feels like the world at large has started celebrating vitiligo. And that's incredibly exciting, because to just stop some of the like social isolation, bullying, and stuff like that that can go on when you live with vitiligo. And so the more that the world at large and big brands accept vitiligo, the better day-to-day life will be for many of those living with the condition. But I think what's not being talked about is that people are still struggling. Just because models with vitiligo are being included in marketing doesn't mean that the realities of living with vitiligo have just suddenly gone away. And so there are a lot of people that still struggle, still want treatment and a cure. And I think that that conversation is getting lost. And I think people who are struggling and maybe want to cover their skin being shamed because of that choice. And I think that's hurtful for a number of reasons. The first is that vitiligo only accounts for 1% of the world's population. That's only 1%. Like, we need to stick together. Like, we can't divide ourselves even further. Second is just that we have worked so hard to get the world at large to accept vitiligo that it's hard to see people with vitiligo judging other people with vitiligo. Like, we didn't work to get to this point to turn on each other. And I think that's disheartening to see. And then just also like people that love their vitiligo and have accepted their skin and are thriving with this condition are truly like inspiring for those who are still struggling. And so we need their stories. Like, that is a good thing. But my hope for the future is that like those who are in a good place can turn around and lift others up instead of judging them for not being in a place of acceptance. The first one is just that everyone experiences vitiligo differently. Like we just talked about, there are some people who struggle with it. There are some people that want to cover their skin. There are some people that love and embrace their skin. There are some people that could care less about their vitiligo, and they barely notice it and it doesn't bother them. So I think just recognizing that everyone's story is unique is important, and just being respectful of where everyone is at. The thing that made me struggle the most growing up was just dealing with all of the stares. And people stare mostly out of curiosity. It's not meant to be harmful or hurtful. Perhaps you've never seen vitiligo before. It's interesting to look at. And I totally get that. But the reality is that for a lot of people who are being stared at, the curiosity that someone has does not outweigh the pain and emotional damage that staring can do to someone. I've talked a lot about this on Living Dappled and with other people, and just being stared at can make you feel so uncomfortable and ruin your day so quickly. And it's hard to just be pulled down into that emotional trap. And so the kindest thing you can do is just to treat someone with vitiligo like they're anyone else. Smile, but maybe don't stare. And the last, which I think is more of just a timely thing, is that World Vitiligo Day is coming up, which is really exciting. It's celebrated on June 25th of each year. And it's just a day to raise awareness about this condition and share your story. So you can do that by wearing a vitiligo t-shirt, sharing your story on social media. You can search hashtag vitiligo on many social platforms and find other stories and just connect with the vitiligo community.